Krishnamurti, in dialogue with Dr. Alan W. Anderson. J. Krishnamurti was born in South India and educated in England. For the past 40 years, he has been speaking in the United States, Europe, India, Australia, and other parts of the world. From the outset of his life's work, he repudiated all connections with organized religions and ideologies and said that his only concern was to set men absolutely, unconditionally free. He is the author of many books, among them The Awakening of Intelligence, The Urgency of Change, Freedom from the Known, and The Flight of the Eagle. This is one of a series of dialogues between Krishnamurti and Dr. Alan W. Anderson, who is professor of religious studies at San Diego State University, where he teaches Indian and Chinese scriptures and the oracular tradition. Dr. Anderson, a published poet, received his degree from Columbia University and the Union Theological Seminary. He has been honored with a Distinguished Teaching Award from the California State Universities.
Mr. Krishnamurti, we were talking last time together about death in the context of living and love. And as I remember, just as we came to the close of what we were discussing, we thought it would be good to pursue this in terms of a further inquiry into education. What really goes on between teacher and student when they begin looking together, and what are the traps that immediately appear and shock. You mentioned the terror of death, not simply externally, but internally in relation to thought. And it seemed to me perhaps it would be a splendid thing if we just continued that and went deeper into it.
So I would like to ask why we are educated at all. What is the meaning of this education that people receive? Apparently, they don't understand a thing of life. They don't understand fear, pleasure, the whole thing that we have discussed, and the ultimate fear of death and the terror of not being. Is it that we have become so utterly materialistic that we're only concerned with good jobs, money, pleasure, and superficial amusements, entertainments, whether they be religious or football? Is it that that our whole nature and structure has become so utterly meaningless? And when we are educated to that, and to suddenly face something real is terrifying. And as we were saying yesterday, we are not educated to look at ourselves. We are not educated to understand the whole business of living. We are not educated to look and see what happens if we face death. So I was wondering, as we came along this morning, religion, which we are going to discuss anyhow, has become merely not only a divisive process, but also utterly meaningless. may be 2,000 years as Christianity, or 3-5 as Hinduism, Buddhism, and so on, it has lost its substance. And we never inquire into what is religion, what is education, what is living, what is dying, you know, the whole business of it. We never ask, what is it all about? And when we do ask, we say, well, life has very little meaning. And it has very little meaning as we live. And so we escape into all kinds of fantastic, romantic nonsense, which has no reason behind, which is not a, we can't discuss or logically inquire, but is mere escape from this utter emptiness that a life that one leads. I don't know if you saw the other day a group of people adoring a human being, and that's doing most fantastic things. And that's what they call religion, that's what they call God. They seem to have lost all reason. Reason apparently has no meaning anymore either.
I did see a documentary that was actually put on by this station, in which the whole meeting operation was being portrayed between the public and this individual in this young 15-year-old guru, Maharaji. And it was
disgusting.
It was extraordinarily amazing. And it was, in many respects, revolting.
And that's what they call religion. So, shall we begin with the religion, go on?
Yes, I think it would be a splendid thing to do.
All right, sir. No, I feel man has always wanted or tried to find out something beyond the everyday living, everyday routine, everyday pleasures, every activity of thought. He wanted something much more. I don't know, you have been to India. I do not know if you've been to villages. They put a little stone under a tree, put some marking on it. Next day they have flowers, and the fourth day people are there. It has become divinity. It has become something religious. That same principle is continued in the cathedrals. It's exactly the same thing when you Mass and all the rituals in India and all that. It begins there. The desire for human beings to find something more than what thought has put together. Not being able to find it, they romanticize it. They create symbols. Or somebody who has got a little bit of this, they worship. And around that they do all kinds of rituals, Indian puja, you know, all that business goes on. And that's called religion, which has absolutely nothing to do with behavior, with our daily life. So, seeing all this, both in the West and the East, in the world of Islam, in the world of Hindu Buddhism and all that, it's the same principle going on. Worshipping an image which they have created, whether it's the Buddha or Jesus or Christ, it is the human mind that has created the image.
Oh, yes. Oh, certainly.
And they worship the image which is their own. In other words, they are worshipping themselves.
And the division, the split, grows wider. Yes.
So religion, when one asks, what is religion? Obviously, one must negate, in the sense, not brutally cut off, understand all this. And so negate all the religions. Negate the religion of India and the multiple gods and goddesses, and here the religion of Christianity, which is an image which they have created, which is idolatry. They mightn't like to call it idolatry, but it is. It's an idolatry of the mind. The mind has created the ideal, and the mind, through the hand, created the statue, the cross, and so on and so on. So, if one really puts all that aside, the belief, the superstition, the worship of the person, worship of an idea, and the rituals and the tradition, all that, if one can do it, and one must do it to find out.
Exactly. There's a point of terror here that is many, many faceted, it seems to me. It has so many different mirrors that it holds up to one's own dysfunction. To reach the place where one is willing to begin at the point where he makes this negation in order to find out. He thinks very often that he's being required to assume something in advance in order to make the negation. And therefore he balks at that, and he won't do it.
No, because the brain needs security. Otherwise it can't function.
That's right.
So it finds security in a belief, in an image, in rituals, in the propaganda of 2,000 or 5,000 years. And there is a sense of safety, comfort, security, well-being. Somebody is looking after the image of somebody greater than me who's looking after my, inwardly he's responsible, all that. So when you are asking a human being to negate all that, he's faced with an immense sense of danger. Immense sense of, he becomes panicked.
Exactly.
So to see all that, to see the absurdity of all the present religions, the utter meaninglessness of it all, and to face being totally insecure and not be frightened.
I sense a trick that one can play on himself right here.
Oh.
Again, I'm very grateful to you that we're exploring together this pathology.
Yes.
And in its various facets. One can begin with the notion that he's going to make this negation in order to attain to something better.
No, that's not negation.
And that's not negation at all.
The negation is to deny what is false, not knowing what is true.
Yes.
To see the false in the false, and to see the truth in the false. And it is the truth that denies the false. You don't deny the false. But you see what is false. And the very seeing of what is false is the truth.
Yes, of course.
And that denies, that sweeps away all this. I don't know if I make myself clear.
Well, I had a very interesting experience in class yesterday. I had given the class an assignment. I think I mentioned this in a conversation we had yesterday. I'd given the class an assignment to go and look at the tree. So in effect, I'm making a report as to what happened after they came back. Well, one young woman described what happened to her. And she described it in such a way that the class was convinced, and I was convinced, that there was no blockage of her looking between herself and this tree. She was calmly ecstatic in her report. That sounds like a curious juxtaposition of words, but it seems to me to be correct. But then I asked her a question. And I said, well, now, were you thinking of yourself as looking at this tree? And she hesitated. Mind you, she'd already gone through this whole statement, which was very beautifully undertaken. And I come along playing the role of the serpent in the garden, you see? and I said, well, now, might it not have been the case at any time when you were doing this that you thought of yourself looking at the tree? And with this hesitation, she began to fall more and more out of her own act. Well, we had a look at that. She and I and the class, we all had a look at what she was doing. Finally, she turned around and said, well, the reason that I stopped was not because of what went on between me and the tree. I'm very clear about that. It's because I'm in class now, and I'm thinking that I ought to say the right thing. And so I've gone and ruined the whole thing. It was a revelation not only to her, but you could see with respect to the faces all around the room, that we're all involved in this nonsense.
Yes, sir.
And her shock that she could so betray this relationship that she'd had in doing her exercise in just a couple of words was
very revealing.
Almost, it was, yes, extremely revealing, but at the same time, desperately hard to believe that anybody would do such a thing to himself. Yes, please do go on.
So, sir, that's it. Negation can only take place when the mind sees the false. The very perception of the false is a negation of the false. And when you see the religions based on miracles, based on personal worship, based on the fear that you yourself, your own life is so shoddy, empty, meaningless, and it is so transient. You're gone in a few years, and the mind creates the image which is eternal, which is marvelous, which is the beautiful, the heaven, and identifies with it and worships it. Because it needs a sense of security, deeply. And it has created all this superficial nonsense, a circus. It is a circus.
Oh, yes.
So can the mind observe this phenomenon and see its own demand for security, comfort, safety, permanency, and deny all that? Deny in the sense, see how the brain thought creates the sense of permanency. eternality, or whatever you like to call it. And to see all that. Therefore, one has to go much more deeply, I think, into the question of thought. Because both in the West and the East, thought has become the most important movement in life. Right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Thought, which has created this marvelous world of technology, marvelous world of science and all that, and thought which has created the religions. All the marvelous chants, both the Gregorian and the Sanskrit chants. A thought which has built these beautiful cathedrals. Thought which has made images of the saviors, the masters, the gurus, the father image. Unless one really understands thought, what is thinking, we will still play the same game in a different field.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, look what is happening in this country. These gurus come from India. They shave their head, put on the Indian dress, little tuft of hair hanging down, and repeat endlessly what somebody has said. A new guru. They have had old gurus, the priests.
Oh, yes.
The Catholic, the Protestant, and they have denied them, but accept the others. You follow?
Yes.
The others are as dead as the old ones, because they're just repeating tradition. Traditionally repeating how to sit, how to shave, how to meditate, how to hold your head, breathe, and finally obey what the old guru says, or the young guru says, which is exactly what took place in the Catholic world, in the Protestant. You follow? They deny that and yet accept the other. Because they want security. They want somebody to tell them what to do, what to think. Never how to think.
No, this raises a question that I hope we can explore together, that concerns the word experience.
Oh, yes, that's another word.
It's amazing how often in these times this word crops up to represent something that I desperately need, which somehow lies outside myself. I need the experience of an awakening.
Yes.
It isn't an awakening that I need, apparently. It's an experience of this awakening. The whole idea of religion as experience seems to me to need very, very careful thought, very careful penetration. Very careful penetration.
If I may ask, why do we demand experience? Why is this craving for experience? I mean, we have sexual experience, experiences of every kind, don't we?
Yes.
As we live. Insults, flattery, happenings, incidents, influences, what people say, don't say. We read a book that, and so on, so on. We are experiencing all the time. We are bored with that. And we say, we go to somebody who will give me the experience of God.
Yes, that's precisely what's claimed.
Yeah. Now, what is involved in that? What is involved in experience in the demand for experience and the experiencing of that demand. I experience what that guru or master or somebody tells me. How do I know it is real? And I say, I recognize it, don't I say? Look, I experience something. And I can only know that I have experienced it only when I have recognized it. Right?
Right.
Recognition implies I've already known.
Recognize.
Recognize.
Yes.
So, I am experiencing what I've already known. Therefore, it's nothing new. I don't know if
Yes, you're making yourself very, very clear.
So, all they are doing is a self-deception.
It is actually lusted after.
That's, oh, good Lord, yes.
Yes. The drive for it is extraordinary. I've seen it in many, many students who will go to extraordinary austerities. Really.
Oh, I noticed.
We sometimes think that that young people today are very loose in their behavior. Well, some are, but what's so new about that? That's been going on since time out of mind. I think that what is rarely seen is that many young persons today are extremely serious about acquiring something that someone possesses that they don't have. And if someone claims to have it, naively, they're on their way. And they'll go through any number of cartwheels. They'll stand on their head indefinitely for that lies out.
I've seen all this.
Yes, which is called an experience as such.
That's why one has to be very careful, as you pointed out, sir, to explore this word and to see why the mind, why a human being demands more experience. When his whole life is a vast experience, with which he's so bored. He thinks this is a new experience. But to experience the new, how can the mind recognize it as the new? Unless it's already known it. I don't know if I...
Yes, and there's something very remarkable here in terms of what you said earlier, in other previous conversations that we've had. In the recognition of what is called the new, the linkage with old thought, old image, establishes the notion that there's something gradual in the transition.
Yes.
That there really is some kind of genuine link here with where I am now and where I was before. Now I become the next guru who goes out and teaches the person how gradually to undertake this discipline.
Yes, sir.
And it never stops. No, I do see that. It's amazing, it's amazing. Driving down in the car this morning, I was thinking about the whole business of chant that you mentioned, the beauty of it all. And since this is related to experience as such, I thought maybe we could examine the aesthetics in terms of where this self-trapping lies in it. And of course, I thought of Sanskrit and that beautiful invocation that is chanted to the Upanishad, the Isha, Purnam Adar, Purnam Idam, Purnat Purnam Udachyate, Purnasya Purnam, and it goes on. And I said to myself, if one would attend to those words, there's the echo of the abiding through the whole thing, through that whole glorious cadence. And yet, within it, there's the radical occasion to fall into a euphoria.
Yes, sir.
And somnolence takes over. But it's within the very same. And I said to myself, well, maybe Mr. Krishnamurti would say a word about the relation of beauty to this in terms of one's own relation to the beautiful, when that relation is not seen for what it is. Since there's a narcosis present that I can generate. It isn't in those words. And yet we think that the language must be at fault. There must be something demonically hypnotic about this. We do. And then religious groups will separate themselves totally from all this.
Oh,
well, we
yes,
had
sir.
a period in Europe when Protestants, Calvinists wouldn't allow an organ, no music.
No music.
Because music is seductive.
It's music.
I'm not the self-seducer. It's the music's fault. Yes, yes. Let's look at that.
That is just it. It's as we were saying the other day, sir, beauty can only be when there is the total abandonment of the self. Complete emptying the consciousness of its content, which is the me. Then there is a beauty which is something entirely different from the pictures, chants, all that. And probably most of these young people, and also the older people, seek beauty in that sense through the trappings of the church, through chants, through reading the Old Testament with all its beautiful words and images and all that. And that gives them a sense of deep satisfaction. In other words, sir, what they are seeking is really gratification through beauty. Beauty of word, beauty of chant, beauty of all the robes and the incense and the light of the coming through those marvelous pieces of color. You've seen it all in cathedrals, Notre Dame and Chartres and all these places. Marvelous.
Yes.
And it gives them a sense of sacredness, sense of feeling happy, relieved. At last there is a place where I can go and meditate, be quiet, get into contact with something. And when you come along, say, look, that's all rubbish. It has no meaning. What has meaning is how you live in your daily life.
Yes.
Then they throw a brick at you.
Of course, it's like taking food away from a starving dog.
Exactly. So, this is the whole point, sir. Experience is a trap. And all the people want this strange experience which the gurus think they have.
Which is always called the knowledge. Interesting.
Very, very.
Isn't it? It's always called the knowledge. Yes. Of course, I was thinking of our previous conversations about this self-transformation that is not dependent on knowledge.
Of course not.
Not dependent on time.
No.
And eminently requires responsibility.
You see, and also, sir, we don't want to work. We work very strenuously in earning a livelihood. Look what we do. Year after year after year, day after day, day after day. The brutality, the ugliness of all that. But here, inwardly, psychologically, we don't want to work. We're too lazy. Let the other fellow work. Perhaps he has worked, and perhaps he'll give me something. But I don't say, I'm going to find out. I'll deny the whole thing and find out.
No, the assumption is that the priest's business is to have worked in order to know, so that I am relieved of that task, or if I didn't come into the world with enough marbles, then all I need do is simply follow his instructions, and it's his fault if he gets it messed up.
Yeah, and we never ask the man who says, I know, I have experience. What do you know?
Exactly.
What have you experienced? What do you know? When you say, I know, you only know something which is dead, which is gone, which is finished, which is the past. You can't know something that's living. You follow, sir?
Yes.
A living thing, you can never know, it's moving. It is never the same. And so I can never say, I know my wife, or my husband, because they're living human beings. But these fellows come along, from India especially, and they say, but I know, I have experience, I have knowledge, I will give it to you. And I say, what impudence. You follow, sir?
Yes.
What callous indifference that you know and I don't know. And what do you know?
It's amazing what's been going on in terms of the relation between men on the one hand and women on the other, or man and woman with respect to this, because a whole mythology has grown up about this. For instance, woman, we say, our sex says, woman is mysterious. And never is this understood in terms of the freshness of life, which includes everything, not just woman. Now we have an idea that woman is mysterious. So we're talking about something in terms of an essence, which has nothing to do with existence.
Exactly.
Isn't that what you're...
That's your...
Yes, yes, goodness me. And as you said earlier, we're actually taught this. This is all in books. This is all in the conversations that go on in classrooms.
So that's why I feel education is destroying people, as it is now. It has become a tragedy. If I had a son, which I have not, thank God, I would say, where am I to educate him? What am I to do with him? To make him like the rest of the group? Like the rest of the community? Thought, memories, accept, obey. You follow, sir? All the things that are going on. And when you are faced with that, as many people are now, they are faced with this problem.
Oh, they are, yes. Yes, there's no question about that.
And so we say, look, let's start a school. Which we have in India, which we're going to do in California at Ohio. We're going to do that. Let's start a school where we think totally differently, where we are taught differently. Not just the routine, to accept or to deny, react, you know, the whole thing. So from that arises another question. Why does the mind obey? I obey the laws of the country. I obey keeping to the left side of the road or right side of the road. I obey what the doctor tells me. Obey. I'm careful what he tells me. If I'm little, personally, don't go near doctors. If I do, I'm very careful. I listen very carefully what they have to say. I'm watchful. I don't accept immediately this or that. But politically, in a so-called democratic world, they won't accept a tyrant. Right?
Mm-hmm. No, they won't
They
accept
say no authority, freedom. Mm-hmm. But spiritually, inwardly, they accept every Tom, Dick and Harry. Mm-hmm. Especially when they come from India.
Oh, yes.
The other day, I turned on with London BBC, and there was a man interviewing a certain group of people. And the boy and the girl said, "We obey entirely what our guru says." I said, and the interviewer said, "Will he tell you to marry? If he tells me, I'll marry. If he tells me I must starve, I will starve. Far. Just a slave. You understand, sir?" Mm. And yet this very same person would object to political tyranny.
Absurd. Yes.
There he will accept the tyranny of a petty little guru with his fanciful ideas, and he will reject politically a tyranny or a dictatorship. So why does the mind divide life into accepting authority in one way, in one direction, and deny it in another? And what is the importance of authority? That is, the word authority, as you know, means the one who originates.
Author. Yes.
And these priests, gurus, leaders, spiritual preachers, what have they originated? They are repeating tradition, aren't they?
Oh, yes, precisely.
And tradition, whether it's from the Zen tradition, the Chinese tradition, or Hindu, is a dead thing. And these people are perpetuating the dead thing. The other day I saw a man. He was explaining how to meditate. Put your hands here, close your eyes. And
yes, that's the one I saw.
And do this, that, and the other. I said, good God.
It was appalling. It was appalling.
And people accept it, you know.
And on the same thing, there was this woman who had run out of money and every blessed thing. She had nowhere to go to sleep and so forth. And hysterically, she was saying, I'm in line. I've got all these people ahead of me, but I must have this knowledge. I must have this knowledge. The hysteria of it, the desperation of it.
That's why, sir, what is behind this acceptance of authority? You understand? The authority of law, the authority of the policeman, the authority of the priest, the authority of these gurus. What is behind this acceptance of authority? Is it fear? Fear of going wrong spiritually? Of not doing the right thing in order to gain enlightenment, knowledge, the super consciousness, whatever it is? Is it fear? Or is it a sense of despair? A sense of utter loneliness, utter ignorance. I'm using the word ignorance in the deeper sense of the word.
Yes, I follow.
Which makes me say, there is a man there who says he knows, I'll accept him. I don't reason. You follow, sir? I don't say, what do you know? What do you bring to us, give to your own tradition from India? Who cares? You're bringing something dead, nothing original. You follow, sir? Nothing real. but repeat, 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 repeat what others have done, which in India themselves are throwing out.
Yes, I was just thinking of Tennyson's lines that apropos of this, though in a different context when he wrote it. There's not to reason why, there's but to do and die.
The good old thing, yes.
Yeah.
So what is behind this acceptance of authority?
It's interesting that the word authority is radically related to the self.
Yes.
Autos, the self. There is this sensed gaping void through the division.
Yes, sir, that's just.
Through the division. And that immediately opens up a hunger, doesn't it? And my projection of my meal, I've run madly to.
You see, that when you see this, you want to cry. You follow, sir?
Yes.
I mean, all these young people going to these gurus, shaving their head, dressing in Indian dress, dancing in the streets, and you know, fantastic things they're doing. All on a tradition which is dead. All tradition is dead, if you like. And when you see that, you say, my God, what is happening? So I go back and ask, why do we accept? Why are we influenced by these people? Why are we influenced when there is a constant repetition in a commercial, buy this, buy this, buy this? It's the same as that. You follow, sir? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why do we accept? The child accepts, I can understand that. Poor thing, he doesn't know anything. It needs security, it needs a mother, it needs a care, it needs a protection, it needs for it to sit in your lap and be, you follow, affectionate, kind, gentle, that it needs that. Is it, they think the Guru gives him all this? Through their words, through their rituals, through their repetition, through their absurd disciplines, you follow? Sense of acceptance, as I accept my mother and child, I accept that in order to be comfortable, in order to feel at last something after me.
This relates to what you said in a previous conversation when we looked into fear. The reaction of the infant is a reaction with no intermediary of any kind, of his own contrivance. He simply recognizes that he has a need. And this is not an imagined want. It is a radical need. He needs to feed. He needs to be affectionately held. The transition from that to the point where one, as he gets older, begins to think about the source of the meeting of that need, emerges as the image that is interposed between the sense of danger and the immediate action. So, if I'm understanding you correctly, there's a deflection here from the radical purity of act.
That's right, sir. See,
and I've done that myself. I have done that myself. It isn't because of anything that I was told that actually coerced me to do it, even though what you say is true. We are continually invited. It's a kind of siren-like call that comes to us throughout the entire culture, in all cultures, to start that stuff.
So that's what I want to get at. Why is it that we accept authority. In the democratic world, politically, you would shun any dictator. But yet, religiously, they're all dictators. And why do we accept it? Why do I accept the priest as an intermediary to something which he says he knows? And so it shows we stop reasoning. Politically we reason. We see how important it is to be free. Free speech, free, everything free, as much as possible. We never think freedom is necessary here. Spiritually, we don't feel the necessity of freedom. And therefore we accept it. Any Tom, Dick and Harry is horrifying. The most, I've seen intellectuals, professors, scientists falling for all this trash. Because they have reasoned in the scientific world and are weary of reasoning. And here at last, I can sit back, not reason, be told, be comfortable, be happy. I'll do all the work for you. You don't have to do anything. I'll take you over the river. You follow?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And I'm delighted. So, we accept where there is ignorance, where reason doesn't function, where intelligence is in abeyance, and you need all that, freedom, intelligence, reasoning, in with regard to real spiritual matters. Otherwise what? Some guru comes along and tells you what to do, and you repeat what he does. You follow how destructive it is? How degenerate it is, that's what's happening.
Endlessly.
I don't think these gurus realize what they are doing.
No.
They're encouraging degeneracy.
Well, they represent
They are
a chain of the same.
Exactly. So can we, so this brings up a very important question. Can we educate, can there be an education in which there is no authority whatsoever?
I must say yes to that in terms of the experience that I had in class yesterday. It was a tremendous shock to the students when they suspended their disbelief for a moment, just to see whether I meant it when I said, now we must do this together. Not you're doing what I say to do.
Do it to walk together.
We will do this together.
Share it together.
Right. You will question, and I will question, and we'll try to grasp as we go along without trying. And I went into the business about let's not have this shoddy little thing trying.
Not right, quite right.
That took a little while. That increased the shock because the students who have been, to their own great satisfaction, what you'd call devoted,
Yes.
those who do their work, who make effort, are suddenly finding out that this man has come into the room and he's giving trying a bad press. This does seem to turn the thing completely upside down. But they showed courage in the sense that they gave it
Quite.
a little attention before beginning the true act of attention. That's why I was using courage there, because it's a preliminary to that. I've quite followed you when you have raised the question about the relation of courage to the pure act of attention. It seems to me that that's not where it belongs.
No.
But they did get it up for this preliminary step. But then we ran into this what I think I called in an earlier conversation dropping a stitch, where they really saw this abyss. They were alert enough to stand over the precipice, and that caused them to freeze. And it's that moment that seems to me absolutely decisive.
Yes.
That it's almost like one sees in terms of events, objective events. I remember reading the Spanish philosopher Ortega, who spoke of events that tremble back and forth before the thing actually tumbles into itself. Well, that was happening in the room, but it was like water that moved up to the lip of the cup and couldn't quite spill over. I've spoken about this at some length because I wanted to describe to you a real situation, what was actually happening.
I was going to say, sir, I've connected with very many schools for 40 years and more. And when one talks to the students about freedom and authority and acceptance, they're completely lost.
Yes.
They want to be slaves. My father says this, I must do this. Or my father says, I won't do that. It's the same.
Exactly. Do you think in our next conversation we could look at that moment of hesitation?
Yes, sir.
It seems to me so terribly critical for education itself. Wonderful.
Krishnamurti, in dialogue with Dr. Alan W. Anderson. J. Krishnamurti was born in South India and educated in England. For the past 40 years, he has been speaking in the United States, Europe, India, Australia, and other parts of the world. From the outset of his life's work, he repudiated all connections with organized religions and ideologies and said that his only concern was to set men absolutely, unconditionally free. He is the author of many books, among them The Awakening of Intelligence, The Urgency of Change, Freedom from the Known, and The Flight of the Eagle. This is one of a series of dialogues between Krishnamurti and Dr. Alan W. Anderson, who is professor of religious studies at San Diego State University, where he teaches Indian and Chinese scriptures and the oracular tradition. Dr. Anderson, a published poet, received his degree from Columbia University and the Union Theological Seminary. He has been honored with a Distinguished Teaching Award from the California State Universities.
Mr. Krishnamurti, in our series of conversations, we've reached, it seems to me, an especially critical place in our last discussion together, we touched on the question of authority, not only in relation to what is out there that we project and what is out there that faces us, literally, but also the question at the deeper level of my relationship within, and the point where in the inquiry, in going deeply into myself, in self-examination, there is a point of boggling. One boggles, one is faced, and one is hesitant and trembles. It is a real fear and trembling that
yes.
occurs at the brink of that inquiry. And I think you were at the conclusion of our former conversation moving toward a discussion of that in terms of its role in the religious life.
That's right.
Yes.
So why do we hesitate? That's what comes to what you're saying. Why do we not take the plunge? That's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking, yes.
Why is it always coming to the brink and withdrawing, running away? Why don't we see the thing as is and act? Is it part of our education that has cultivated function, enormous function? We give tremendous importance to function. As an engineer, as a professor, as a doctor, and so on, so on, functioning in a particular technique. And we have never cultivated or encouraged or inquired into what is intelligence. Where there is intelligence, there won't be this hesitation. There is action. I mean, when one is very sensitive, you act. That sensitivity is intelligence. Now, in education, as I've observed it both here and in India and other parts of the world, education is merely the training the mind to function to the dictates of society. So many engineers are wanted. So many doctors are wanted. If you get into a profession where there are few, you might make more money.
You have to watch out for the glut.
Glut. Yeah, don't become a too scientific. There are enough science, or
Yes.
whatever it is.
Oh dear, yes.
So we are encouraged and trained to function in the field of activity as functions, careers. Now, we hesitate to enter or plunge into something that demands all your attention,
Yes.
not fragmentary, all your attention, because we don't know what to measure. We know how to measure function. Here we have no measure. Therefore I depend. Therefore I won't reason here, because I don't know how to reason. I don't say to a man who says, I know. I say, what do you know? You only know something that's gone, finished, dead. You can't say, I know something that's living. And so gradually, as I see it, the mind becomes dull, restless. Its curiosity is only in the direction of functioning, and not it has no capacity to inquire. To inquire, you must have freedom first. I can't inquire otherwise. If I come to inquire to something which I have to inquire about, if I have prejudices, I can't inquire. If I have conclusions about that, I can't inquire. Therefore, there must be freedom to inquire. And that is denied. Because I've laid, society and culture laid tremendous importance on function. And function has its own status.
Oh, yes, yes. It's exalted ultimately into process.
Yeah, into a status.
Right.
So status matters much more than function.
Mm-hmm.
And so I live in that field, live in that structure, and if I want to inquire into religion, what is God, what is immortality, what is beauty, I can't do it. I depend on an authority.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have no basis for reasoning. You follow, sir? In this vast field of religion. So, it is partly the fault of our education, partly our incapacity to look at anything objectively. Our incapacity to look at a tree without all the rigmarole, knowledge, screen, blocks that prevents me from looking at the tree. I never look at my wife, if I have a wife or a girl, whatever. I never look. I look at her or him through the image I have about her, him or her. So the image is the dead thing. So I never look at a living thing. I never look at nature with all the marvel of it, the beauty of it, the shape, the loveliness of it. But I'm always translating it, trying to paint it, write about it, or enjoy it. You follow? So, from that arises the question, why do human beings accept authority, obey? Is it because they have been trained in the field of function, where you must obey to learn? You follow? You can't
Oh,
just,
yes. No, it has its own laws built in.
It has its own disciplines.
Exactly.
It has its own laws, its own ways. Because I have been trained that way, I bring that over here into the field of religion, to the field of something that demands freedom. Freedom, not at the end, right from the beginning. Mind must be free from authority from the beginning. If I want to find out what is God, not I believe in God, that's no meaning. If there is God, if there is no God, I really want to find out. I am terribly serious. And if I am really serious, I'm really concerned to the understanding, learning about God, if there is God, I must push aside completely all the beliefs, all the structure, all the churches, all the priests, all the books, all the things that thought has put together about religion. You follow?
Yes, I do. I've been thinking very hard about your word intelligence and the word truth in relation to what you've been saying. And the passage from the gospel came to my mind, which would end up, I think, with a very different exegesis in terms of what you've been saying if one applied what you've been pointing to this text. When he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth, and the truth shall make you free. the truth is called a spirit here. And in the very same St. John's Gospel, God is also called spirit, radical act, not this spirit over there, out there somewhere that I've projected. If one takes seriously, the terrible thing is that it hasn't been taken seriously.
Because we are not allowed to be serious.
That we can't even be serious about the thing that is claimed we must be the most serious about.
That's just it.
Yes, I know. I know what you mean.
We are not serious about our children. We don't feel responsible for them. Right through life. Only when they are till they're 4, 5, 6, we're responsible. You know, after that they can do what they want. So, freedom and authority cannot possibly exist. Freedom and intelligence go together. And intelligence has its own innate, natural, easy discipline. Discipline in the sense of not of suppression, control, imitation, all that, but discipline which is the act of learning all the time.
In attention.
Yes, in attention.
In attention.
Yeah.
This intelligence that you speak of is associated with splendor, isn't it?
Yes.
Its advent is immediate, not gradual.
No, of course not. The perception is intelligence.
The perception is intelligence, and the
And therefore
perception
acting.
is the act.
Of course.
So the act, intelligence, beauty,
Alcohol,
love, truth, freedom,
and death, all the
order,
one.
they form a complete,
Whole.
total, integral movement
That's
in
right.
act. That in itself, looked at positively, is even, once it's translated into a concept,
Oh, then it's no longer that.
becomes in itself an occasion for terror again.
Of course.
Because it seems that it runs away too fast from you.
Yes.
As soon as you, yes, I see. Isn't that marvelous? It's as though these that you've mentioned, beauty, intelligence, love, freedom,
And death.
have, so to speak, secured themselves against all tomfoolery.
Yes, tomfoolery, quite right.
They have just, they are so radically pure that any foolery.
So that means, can the mind put aside totally all the structure of thought with regard to religion? It can't put away the function of thought in the field of knowledge. That's what I've understood, that's very clear. But here there is something I don't know, we don't know. You follow, sir? We pretend we know. When the man says there is Jesus is Savior or whatever, it is a pretension. It is saying, I know and you don't know. What do you know in the name of heaven? You know nothing. You just repeat what you have learned for somebody else. So can the mind, in the field of religion, which is the most, because religion is, as we said at the beginning, the gathering of all energy in that quality of attention. And it is that quality of attention that regenerates man. That brings about real transformation in man with regard to his conduct, his behavior, his whole way of relationship. Religion is that factor, not all this foolery that's going on. Now, to inquire, mind must put aside all the structure of thought built around that word.
Yes, I do.
Can one do it? If not, we are pretending, talking about God, no God, yes God, for all that nonsense that is going on. So that's the first question. Can the mind be free of the authority of another? However great, however sublime, however divine or no divine, you follow?
And because an act is required in order to answer this question,
Absolutely.
the individual must do this on his own.
Otherwise he merely lives in a routine of function, which he has, which he's still doing, and therefore he escapes into all these circuses, which he calls religion.
This came home to me with great dramatic force yesterday in class. On the one hand, we have textbooks. Textbooks which have survived the centuries because of their classical value in that sense. And the usual way in which this material is taught is that one learns, let us say, something about the Chinese vision of life. Then we have the Hindu vision of life, and then we have, and so we accumulate over a long period of time through school, clear through graduate school, if you hang in there long enough, you can stand it. You come into possession of
what other people have said.
What other people have said.
But you know nothing about it.
Exactly. You acquire certain skills in the order of function, as you've mentioned. Now the teacher has a problem. I'm thinking of these schools that you have referred to in India and the one that will be in Ojai. There is a body of material here. Clearly, the teacher must be in possession of knowledge in the order of functional operation, procedural techniques and so forth. He simply has to know. The child is going to read books.
Of course.
In these schools that you've mentioned, is going to read.
They do.
They read books. Books, all of them haven't been written necessarily by somebody who is undertaking to do the thing that goes on between the students and the teachers in these schools. Now, the teacher must handle this written material in books in a way to indicate to the child, the young student, the older student, that it is possible to read this material without being self-divided in doing it.
And also, what would you do if there was no book?
You'd be in the same position.
Now, if there was no book, nobody say tradition, you had to find out for yourself.
But that's what we're asking him to do with his book, aren't we?
Are we?
No, not in general, but in this new approach.
Of course.
In the new approach, we must somehow
bring the book and the other.
Bring the book and the other
and
together.
Freedom. And the freedom. Book and freedom.
Yes. This is what hit me with such shock yesterday in class. And I immediately felt radically responsible for doing this,
yes,
insofar as I could. And I was surprised to see that though the students were extremely hesitant,
yeah, of course,
there was a lot of anxiety there, real fear and trembling. What of health they possessed did assert itself, and there was a tremendous interest in the possibility. But then there was the hesitation that somehow wasn't passed. The hesitation is there. I have this feeling that this has happened through the centuries with persons who have seriously studied Scripture, since we were talking about religion. Sometimes you can detect it in their very commentaries, in their very writing. They come right up to it.
And miss it.
And then they can't
Make it.
push it over. They can't go
I understand.
beyond the point.
That's, it has been my fortune or misfortune to talk great deal. Everybody comes to that point. And say, please, what am I to do? I've reached that point, I can't go beyond. So look at it this way, if I may suggest. If I had a class, I wouldn't talk about the book first. That's a freedom. You are second-hand people. Don't pretend you are not. You're second-hand, sloppy, shoddy people. And you are trying to find something that is original. The reality is original. It's not colored by all the priests in the world. It's original. Therefore, you must have an original mind, which means a free mind. Not an original painting, a new picture, a new this, that's all Tommy Rod. But a free mind. A free mind that can function in the field of knowledge, and a free mind that can look, observe, learn. Now, how do you help another, or is it not possible to be free? You know? Look, I never belong to anything. I'm no church or no belief, no all that. A man who really wants to find out if there is eternal, the nameless, something beyond all thought, he must naturally set aside everything built on thought. The savior, the masters, the gurus, the knowledge, all that must. Are there people to do that? Will anybody undertake that journey? Or you say, well, you tell me all about it, old boy. I'll sit comfortably, and then you tell me.
Yes, that's what goes on.
I say, I won't describe that. I won't tell you a thing about it. That's to put it into words is to destroy it. So, let us see, if you cannot be free, what are you frightened about? Frightened of authority, frightened of going wrong, but you are completely wrong the way you live. Completely stupid the way you are carrying on. There's no meaning. Follow, sir. Deny the spiritual authority of every kind. Because what are you frightened of? Going wrong spiritually? They are wrong, not you are wrong, because you are just learning. They are the established in the unrighteousness.
It's beautiful. Yes.
And so why do you follow them? Why do you accept them? They are degenerate. And can you be free from all that? So that your mind, through meditation, which we'll discuss perhaps another time, what it means to be free, what it means to wipe away all the things that people have put on you. You understand? So that you are innocent. Your mind is never hurt, is incapable of being hurt. That is what innocency means. And from that, inquire, let's take a journey from there. You follow, sir? From this sense of negation of everything that thought has put together. Because thought is time. Thought is matter. And if you are living in the field of thought, you will never, there will be never freedom. You are living in the past. You may think you are living in the present, but actually you are living in the past when thought is in operation. Because thought is memory, responsive memory, knowledge, experience, stored up in the brain. And that knowledge, experience is the expression of thought. Unless you understand that and know the limitation of thought, you can't enter into the field of that which you call religion. You follow, sir? Unless this is told, repeated, shown to them, they can talk endlessly about books. This comes first. Then you can read the books.
Yes.
So the Buddha never read a book. He listened, watched, looked, observed, fasted, said all that's rubbish and threw it out.
I just noticed something that you said. One must keep on repeating this again.
In different ways.
In different ways and again. I'm speaking now about teaching. This point of hesitation is the point where something will or will not get born.
That's right.
That beautiful expression in earlier conversation of ours that you used, incarnate now.
Now, yes.
So we're on the brink, where, in the words of Ortega I mentioned earlier, rocking back and forth on the brink of a new event. And we're not over the line. There is nothing that any of us can do at that point with respect to the terror of the one who hears this, including my own. I'm not dividing myself from this doing together with the student, since I am a student in this activity. So here we are, student among students. And there's this boggling, this fear and trembling. And nothing can be done other than simply encourage.
And tell them, wait, stay there.
Hold.
Hold. Doesn't matter if you wobble, but keep on wobbling.
Don't bolt.
Don't run away.
And so this is said in different ways over and over again. Now I understand what you meant by saying, now let's start the class 10 minutes
With this.
with this. We don't open the book.
That's right.
Yeah, we don't open the book. We start with this. And then when the book is opened, perhaps the word for a change will disclose itself.
That's right.
Because intelligence has broken out.
Oh, that's right.
And behold, it's all splendid. Yes, please, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure
Yes,
that
yes.
I have, it's terribly important that I understand this.
Because this is students rush from one class to the other. Because the period is short, run. From mathematics to geography, from geography to history, chemistry, biology, run. And if I was one of the professors, teachers, I'd say, look, sit down, be quiet for 5 minutes, be quiet. Look out of the window if you want to, see the beauty of light, of the water, or the leaf, and look at that, this and that, but be quiet.
We teach in classes that don't have windows now.
Of course, naturally.
Yes, I was just being facetious.
Of course, sir.
But not only facetious, it's a horror.
Horror, that's what.
Yeah,
You
go
are
ahead.
trained to be functional. You follow, sir?
I know.
Don't look at anything else, but be monkeys. And my child is brought up that way.
Yes.
It is appalling.
The classroom's a tomb. Yes.
So I say, sit quiet. Then after sitting quietly, I talk about this first. I've done this in the schools. Talk about this. Freedom, authority, beauty, love, all that we have been discussing. Then pick up your book. But you have learned much more here than in the book.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Therefore, the book shows what you follow?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. The book is seen.
Book becomes a second-hand thing.
Yes, it's seen with a clean eye.
That's why, sir, I personally have never read a single book of all this. Neither the Gita, the Upanishads, all that. But what the Buddha has said, it somehow bored me. It meant nothing to me. What has meant anything was to observe. Observe the very poor in India. Observe the rich, the dictators, the Mussolinis, the Hitlers, the Khrushchevs and Brezhnev, all watch them in a politician. And you learn an awful lot. Because the real book is you. Do you understand? If you can read your book, which is yourself, you have learned everything, except the functional knowledge. So, when there is self-knowing, authority has no meaning. I won't accept. Why should I accept these people that bring truth from India? That's not truth they're bringing a tradition. What they believe. So, can the mind put away everything that man has talked or invented, imagined about religion, God, this and that? That means can this mind, which is the mind of the world, which is the mind of common consciousness, can that consciousness empty itself of all the things man has said about reality? Otherwise, I can't. You follow, sir?
Can't begin.
Not only begin. What do I discover? What other
Nothing.
people have said? What Buddha, Christ? Why should I accept them?
Well, the terrible thing is I'm not in a position to grasp whatever they said that was worthwhile until this occurs. This is...
So freedom, sir, is an absolute necessity.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
But none of them say this. On the contrary, they say freedom will come to you much later. Be in the prison for the rest of your life. When you die, you'll have prison. You'll have freedom. That's what they're preaching, essentially. So, can the mind, the heart, and all the storehouse in the brain be free of the things that man has said about reality? So that's a marvelous question, you understand, sir?
Oh, I do. One of the things that seems to me of remarkable cogency in our discussions, in our conversations, has been how continually you've returned to a question.
Yes.
Return to the question. And the notion of return in its depth has, it seems, if I followed you correctly, been quite erroneously presented. The return has been presented as a movement to an answer.
Quite.
But that is not a return.
No, of course not.
No, because the turn is toward that original that you mentioned. Therefore, it is to the question, not to the answer at all.
Quite right.
Is
Quite right. You know, I was staying once in Kashmir, right among the hill mountains, and a group of monks came to see me, freshly bathed and everything, done all the ceremony and all that, had come to see me. And they said they had just come from a group of unworldly people who were super monks, who are very high up in the mountains. And I said, they're totally unworldly. I said, what do you mean by that word, sirs? He said, they've just left the world. They're no longer tempted by the world. And they have this great knowledge of the world. And I said, when they have left the world, have they left the memory of the world? The memory, the knowledge which the world has made, you follow? Which the gurus have put together, the teachers. He said, that's wisdom. How can you leave wisdom? I said, you mean wisdom is bought through a book, through a teacher, from another, through sacrifice, torture, renunciation? You follow, sir, their idea? That is, wisdom is something you can buy from somebody else.
They went up the mountain with all this baggage.
Baggage, that's right. That's exactly what I said. All the baggage which you have put away, the world you have put away, but you carry their baggage. You follow, sir?
Oh, goodness me.
So that is really important thing to if a mind is really very serious, to find out what religion means. Not all this rubbish. I keep on repeating because that seems to be mounting, growing. But to free the mind from all the growth, the accretions. And therefore, which means see the accretions, see all the absurdities.
It throws a very, very different cast on our word worldly.
Yes, that's just it.
They're going up the mountain in order to leave the world, but they're taking immense pains to take it with them.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they're doing when they go into the monastery.
Of course. Goodness. Accretions, incrustations.
So can I come back and the mind be completely alone, not isolated, not withdrawn, not build a wall around itself, say, and then I'm alone. But alone in the sense that aloneness that comes when you put away all this, all the things of thought. You understand? Because thought is so clever, cunning. It can build a marvelous structure and call that reality. But thought is the response of the past. So it is of time. Thought being of time cannot create something which has no time. Thought can function in that field of knowledge, it is necessary, but not in the other. And this doesn't need bravery, it doesn't need sacrifice, it doesn't need torture. Just perception of the false. To see the false is to see the truth in the false. I don't know.
To see the false is to see the truth in the false.
Of course.
I must repeat that again. To see the false is to see the truth in the false.
And see what is considered truth as the false.
Yes. Yes.
So my eyes are stripped of all the false. So that there is no inward deception whatsoever. Because there is no desire to see something, to achieve something. Because moment there is a desire to experience, to achieve, to arrive at enlightenment, all that, there is going to be illusion. Something desire has created. Therefore, the mind must be free of this pursuit of desire and its fulfillment, which we discussed previously. Understand what the structure of desire is. We went to talk about a great deal about that. So, comes to this point, can the mind be free? And free of all the things which are born of fear and desire and pleasure. That means one has to understand oneself at great depth.
The thing that keeps popping up is that one can repeat those questions.
Yes, sir.
And start to think that he has grasped them.
You grasp the words.
Exactly. There's something that you have to come out the other side of.
Quite right.
But the repetition of the question does have a functional value.
I know.
It seems to me.
Yes, sir, it does. That is if the person is willing to listen.
If he's willing to listen. Because thought is incredibly deceitful.
Very.
As you pointed out. Goodness, I was just thinking of poor old Jeremiah's words. The heart is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. Surely he must have
tasted something.
Yeah, and of course, as with the whole line, we did them in. But I was asking myself this question concerning why I went on to continue my formal education. And in following this deeply, it seems to me to go back to something that is going to sound very absurd. But it has something to do with everything you've been talking about. When I was very small, growing up in England, I was put to school rather earlier than many American children put to school. I was read a great deal of poetry. I don't know what's happened to us in this country, but poetry doesn't really exist for the populace at all.
I know.
But thank God I was brought up on it daily.
Yes.
And,
in England, of course, everybody
yes.
reads poetry, Greek, Latin.
Right.
We all went through.
And I was always read poetry by the young woman employed by my parents to look after me and my little sister and so forth. I never went to sleep without hearing it. One day, when I was very small, at school, the teacher read The Owl and the Pussycat Went to Sea in a beautiful pea green boat. That mad thing, marvelously mad thing Edward Lear wrote.
Edward Lear, yeah.
Yes. And you know, I was never the same again. And I know now why. This sounds absolutely absurd. I came to experience in language a splendor that I never lost touch with, despite all the struggles I had with my teachers. I had a bad time in school. To get to the end of formal education and have to say that doesn't sound very good, but I did. I had a pretty grim time. And one of the reasons for the grim time was my refusal to give this up. This
Quite a pussycat in the book.
the fact that there's a bird and a cat in the same boat.
Oh, yeah.
And the man is describing what you've called act, movement, in which truth and beauty and so on move along. Oh, goodness.
So I think we ought to, after coming up to this point, we ought to go very deeply again into the question of meditation.
Yes.
Because religion, in the sense we are talking about, and meditation go together. That means religion isn't just an idea, but it's actual conduct in daily life. Your thoughts, your speech, your behavior is the very essence of religion. You understand, sir? If that doesn't exist, religion can't exist.
Exactly.
It's just words. You can go around spinning a lot of words, go to various circus tents, but that's not religion. So after establishing that deeply in oneself and the understanding of religion, in which then the next thing is, what is meditation? Because that is tremendous importance. Because meditation is something that's really, if it is understood properly, is the most extraordinary thing the man can have. Meditation is not divorced from daily life.
What was running through my mind was not mistaken, the root relation to the word medisthai, medeo.
Medeo is to think, to ponder, to go into.
But in Homer, it actually carries the idea of to provide for in the sense of to care for. Very beautiful. It brings up the question that you raised earlier of true care.
Yes, sir.
That one is not meditating unless he is careful and caring.
Caring more than careful.
Yes. It's all there in the word, and we don't look. Won't have a look. Yes. Yes, please go on, please.
You see, when we have divorced conduct from religion, which we have, divorced relationship from religion, which we have, divorced death from religion, which we have, divorced love from religion. Because we made love into something sensuous, something that is pleasurable. Then religion, which is the factor of regeneration, disappears in man. And that's why we are so degenerate. And it is, from, if I may be very emphatic, unless you have this quality of a mind that is really religious, degeneracy is inevitable. Look at the politicians who are supposed to be the rulers, the guides, the helpers of people. They are degenerate. You can see what is happening in this country and everywhere. They are so corrupt, and they want to bring order. They are so irreligious. They may go to church and Baptist or whatever they are, and yet they are really irreligious. Because they don't behave. So man is becoming more and more degenerate. You can see it, sir. Because religion is the factor that brings a new quality of energy. It's the same old energy, but it has become a new quality. So the brain doesn't degenerate. As we get older, we tend to degenerate. But it doesn't, because it is the freedom from every kind of security of the me has no place.
I noticed this in class yesterday, with this business about energy that you're just talking about. There was a quickening,
yes, sir,
that took place. There was, at the end of the class, and it was strenuous because of this terrible hesitation. But even so, there was a release of energy, which has nothing to do with entertainment at all. People running to get their minds off themselves, as they say, which of course is nonsense. They're just grinding themselves into themselves some more with it. But in this particular case, there was empirical demonstration of what you're saying. Something that is out there, it's to be seen, it's observable. And behold, it sprung up like a green bay tree. Yes, please go on.
You see, sir, that's why the priests throughout the world have made religion into something profitable. Both the worshipper and the intermediary. It has become a business affair. Intellectually business, or it has become really commercial. Not only physically, but inwardly, deeply. Do this and you will reach that.
Utilitarian to the core.
Which is commercial.
Yes.
And so, unless this put an end to, we are going to degenerate more and more and more. And that's why I feel so immensely responsible. Personally, tremendously responsible to the audience when I talk, when I go to the various schools in India. I feel I am responsible for those children. You follow, sir?
Yes, of course, I do. I certainly do.
I say, for God's sake, be different. Don't grow up like that. Look, I go into very, talk a great deal. And they begin to see, but the world is too strong for them. They have to earn a livelihood. They have to resist their parents who want them to settle down and have a good job, marry a house, all that business.
Well,
and the
surely.
Public opinion, this overpopulation is much too strong.
The tremendous weight of that tradition of the 4 stages of life.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I said, let us find out if there are few elite, quote the word elite,
Yes.
if I may use that word without any snobbery. Let's create a few. Really are concerned. Few teachers, few students. Even that becomes very difficult because most teachers they are not good at this or that and therefore become teachers. And you know what they are.
Oh, yes. Oh, dear, 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 yes.
So everything, sir, is against you. Everything. The gurus are against you. The priests are against you. Business people, the teachers, the politicians, everybody is against you. Take that for granted. They won't help you an inch. They want you to go their way. They've got their vested interest in all that.
Yes, I do see that. I do see that with clarity. In our next conversation, do you think we could explore the activity of meditation within the context of all this horror that we have described? Oh, that's wonderful.